Hi, everyone. Dan here with Chief Experts Academy on the Designer Show today. I'm going to be welcoming my guest, Vicki, here in just a few seconds, but I'd like to talk about a few things. First, John won't be with us today. He's got the week off, so he's taking care of some family things up north, and we'll see him next week. So welcome to the show. Vicki's going to talk about 6 things that you could do to hire the right people in your business. But before we get into that, let's do a quick little commercial at Chief Experts Academy. As you already know, as you more than likely know, I do teach Chief Architect software, how to use the software. And the next class coming up, starting next week, March 17th, is Mastering Chief Architect. So that course is going to be a 15-week course. So I'm going to call it the Mastering Chief Architect Slowly course. All right. Rather than pushing, 3 days worth of content at you in 3 full days or something like that. We're going to take our time here and we're going to just go through this. Each week, we're going to do a 90-minute class. I would say 90 minutes plus because we typically always go over. So always budget a little bit more time because there's always lots of Q&A and we just, there's just lots of things that happen near the end. And we typically just keep going as long as you guys want to. So the 15 classes, we're going to dive deep into the program. We're going to dig into a lot of areas that we just don't normally get to in all the other training at Chief. And there'll be lots of handouts and lots of exercises, lots of different things for you to do in this course. I last did this course in version X6. And so it's been quite a while. So I'm really excited about doing it again. And I hope you can join us. So the course starts March 17th. If you're watching this after this date or even way after the course is over, I do record every session that we do. We go and edit each session. We time code everything. We do a really nice job of editing so you can find different topics within a video really easily. So that's a very, I'm very, what's the word? I really pay a lot of attention to that. I want you to be able to find what you're looking for. So I hope you can join us. The course is $597 by itself. You can, we do have some package offers. So I've just finished 3 other courses in the Chief Architect series, Structures and Terminology, Creating a Plan in Chief Architect. That's a really big, quick intro into the program on how you create a set of plans. And then I just also finished one, Structures CAD, where we spent a bunch of 6 sessions going through the 2D CAD in Chief Architect in a lot of detail. So a lot of cool things that we covered there. So you can also get these in packages. So if you get the mastering courses, you can buy both of them, save a couple hundred. You get all 4 courses for that price. So look forward to having you in our class. If you have any questions, by all means, reach out to me, dan@chiefexpert.com. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. With that, let's get into our session for today with Vicki Suiter. Vicki, welcome.
Thank you, Dan.
Nice to see you.
Nice to be here.
Yeah, you we were just talking yesterday, and you had been here last August talking somewhat about this topic. This is more, I think last August you talked more about how to take care of your employees, right? Or what was it we talked about last August?
What did we talk about last August? I apologize. I actually do not remember.
I don't either. I probably should have looked that up. But anyway, if you guys search in the blog, you'll be able to find Vicki's last session there. It was really good. I know every time I get you on and we get together talking about these topics, it's just like mind boggles me how much information you got about all of this and how knowledgeable and well-versed you are about this topic and working with people and in construction in general. I mean, it's just, you've been doing this a long time. You've got your book that you wrote, The Profit Bleed, which I have one myself. I should grabbed it and showed everybody, but wonderful book. It's very plain common sense, just like, bam, that's it. So if you guys haven't, maybe you could hold your book up. I see it right behind you. The Profit Bleed. You can find that on Amazon, and it's just a really good little book full of great information. I just loved how you told the story of the company and how you led them through those different challenges that they were facing, and that was really cool. So,
thank you. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah.
It's funny that the way that I wrote the book as a parable is what Dan is referencing to, and it's interesting because it was somebody that I studied the topic of leadership and working with teams was Patrick Lencioni in Five Dysfunctions of a Team was one of the people who was sort of a mentor to me as I was learning about teams. So it was his format of writing that book that inspired me to write it the way I did. So
Yeah, cool.
it seems like it's more
Congratulations.
fun to read a story. You know what I mean? Because and they're real stories. They're stories of real clients that I've worked with, real situations, and the book is written based on a company that I did work with for quite a long time. That that it's based on, and so it just makes it more real, for people. So
Yeah, and the cool thing about it, it could be anybody out there. There's so many people that deal with the same things all the time in construction. That's one thing I've always learned about this business is that in high school, they never taught us how to run a business. And in college, they probably didn't teach you how to run a business unless, of course, you took college classes. And how many business owners in the construction industry probably even went to college? What's it take to become a contractor? A hammer and a saw? And,
there's a very low entry requirement for entry.
Yeah. Although with licensing, that makes it a little bit tougher. You got to know a few things, but
I'll tell you what though, Dan, I think that contractors are some of the smartest people I know, and they rarely give themselves credit for that. And it's one of the things that has always attracted me to this industry is that I think there's an enormous amount of complexity to it. And I think that when you can find the simplicity in that complexity is where the freedom is to be able to have success. And part of it is like just tapping into like how smart contractors really are. And they don't realize that. So that was kind of the purpose behind the book.
Isn't that the truth? Yeah. I mean, not only that, how resilient contractors are too.
Incredibly.
Because they get beat up and they keep coming back for more. It's like, what the hell? But no, it's a great business if you can get your ducks in a row and have the right people around you and get all your systems in place. And I think you demonstrate that very well in your book. And that's why I'm excited to have you on the show today to talk about how we go about hiring people, because they become the lifeblood of our business when we're out in the field. And this just I got to believe this isn't just for hiring employees, but if you're looking at getting subs, if you're a designer going to work with someone, some of this can work in reverse. How can you become more attractive for those people? So how can you learn to speak the language better to come across more of what you need to know about going to work for someone? So it kind of works both ways.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah. So Vicki, I don't know, I might have asked you this last time, but I always ask everybody, what's your favorite hobby that you like to do?
I would have to say my favorite hobby is cooking.
That's right.
I love to cook. Yeah.
And you are very good at it. So I've had the pleasure of having some of your meals, and and you've written a cookbook.
I did. I wrote a cookbook with my mom that was published in 2012. It's called Manja, I Love You. Yeah. And it's really just a compilation of family recipes that go back actually to my great grandmother, and who owned a bakery in Sicily. And there's a lot of great recipes in it, but really it was a labor of love, and it was sharing history with my family, and
that's awesome.
And those yet to come. So
that's cool. Yeah. Well done. I know it's a lot of work putting a book together, as you've got 2 of them under your belt now, huh?
That is for sure.
That's cool. So, and by the way, you do make fabulous meatballs. Vicki is part of a mastermind group that I'm involved with of different business professionals. We in the construction industry, we meet every month, and then once a year we get together for a live event where many of you that have been to my training events, where I rent a house and fill it up with clients, and then we spend 3, 4, 5 days together learning and just getting to know each other. Well, we do that with our mastermind group too, and it's just a ball. And we all get a chance to share stories about our business and get feedback from each other. And Vicki is the the designated cook for those events. So
I don't know.
we're very fortunate.
Dan.
I know it is, but you lead the charge on those meals that you do, and this is like, yeah,
It's fun though.
so
Yeah.
it really is a great time. And I always recommend that to people that I know. If you can get a chance to get away with your team, the people involved in your business, take a weekend somewhere, go rent some hotel rooms and just put everything away, and get rid of all the distractions, and take some time to meet. Make your own little mastermind group of people, of professionals involved in your world. Highly recommend it. You can go a long way with that. So we got a few people here. Jeff is here. Hey, Jeff, how you doing, man? Nice to see you again. And Bill Murray's here. Hey, Bill.
Hi, Bill.
And Matt.
Hello.
Yep. How you doing, guys? And we've got a few other people on the meeting here. Feel free to chime in with any questions you might have, any comments. Would love to have your feedback. So please get involved. So Vicki, so what, I said this earlier kind of in a flippant way, but so what qualifies you to talk about this topic? I'll say that in a nicer way.
Whatever qualifies us. We make all the mistakes you could possibly make, and eventually you learn from them, and then you get, yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, let me just, I could start with long ago and far away when I became a leader for the first time. And I found myself having a team of like 5 people, and then it grew to 8 people. And I struggled a lot. I didn't have any training in management or leadership, and I didn't really have any understanding of what it took to motivate people, to get people to do their job. And I thought the way to do it was through manipulation, cajoling, gifts, I just was not very good at it. Let's put it that way. And I just found that I was working tons of hours. Like a lot of you guys probably maybe can relate to this. It's like you hire people, but you don't really get the traction that you hoped to have gotten.
Yeah.
And what I discovered, well, first of all, when I started my own business, I was super relieved that I wasn't going to have people reporting to me anymore. Yeah. I only had to depend on myself for results until 4 years in, my business grew a lot, and I found myself having to hire somebody. I was really scared because I just didn't think I was going to be able to do it very well, and I kind of didn't want to, but I knew if I was going to grow, I really had to. And my first hire looked a lot like the hires I'd made before that. And I was still working like 60, 70 hours a week, and I was exhausted. And it was around that time I was reading a book by Stephen Covey called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Mm-hmm. And as I read his words, it's like this light bulb went off in my head, and I went, oh, okay, the problem is me. It's not all these people. And I really need to start to shift how I think about being a leader and managing people and hiring teams. And it really got me started on this whole exploration and learning and journey of wanting to learn from some of the great thought leaders on the topic of leadership and management. And, Patrick Lencioni and Dan Pink and, Michael Gerber. Like I said, Stephen Covey, I just really started, I was like a sponge because I thought I just do not want to have that experience again of having to work so many hours and really struggle with leadership and management. And so that started, that path started me learning a whole lot about the topic of management, leadership, hiring people. And as I was learning, and that was in the early 90s, as I was learning, I was teaching my clients what I was learning. And I have worked exclusively with the construction industry for the last 25 years. So plus years. I was actually married to a painting contractor when I started my business. And I just started to see how when you start to think about leadership, management, hiring, training, and developing people from a different perspective, and you have a good set of processes and practices in place, that your ability as a leader and a business owner to exponentially grow your business, have people take ownership at a completely different level, and really find that, that thing that we all start a business for, which is a great American dream. I want to be able to be free. I want to have choices about my time. And I want to be able to do what I love to do. And I want to be able to make good money at it. And that is the key, is when you learn how to tap into the potential of your team and you learn how to hire the right person and have the system and the structure in place for them to be able to win the game with you and be successful and own a result versus being helpers. All those things combined, I have seen really is the difference that makes the difference. And so I know that was probably a longer-winded answer than maybe you expected.
It's a great answer.
It really is like, that's my journey. And
no, yeah, it really described it well. I mean, part of what you're saying is you don't have to yell at people to get them to do things, because that doesn't work. Belittling people doesn't work. Insulting people doesn't work. As many of us, it happens out there, and that's not how you do it.
Speak to that just for a second?
Yeah.
One of the things that causes that to happen is that we think that we don't want to be negative. We don't want to have controversy. We don't want to have conflict with people. Right. And so we tend to let things build up and not say something, and then until one day we get really upset, and then we blow up, and then there's that conflict. Yeah. And
we know how emotions work when we're upset, and we tend to say things that probably shouldn't be said.
Yeah. So one of the first things, I know that we're going to talk about 6 steps to hiring the right person for the job today. And one of the first things, the steps that I'm going to share with everybody, is one of the keys to being able to have that not happen with your team.
Yeah.
To be able to, it's kind of like, I'll get into it a little bit more, but there's a way to not have that happen.
And I think your description of this is a great preface to what you're about to talk about. This is what we're looking for. So let's put the right people in there so we can make this happen. And I've always been so impressed with the systems that you help clients put in place. And I know you do coaching with contractors all the time to help them put these systems in place. And so this is just great information. So, all right, well, Vicki, why don't we have you just jump into it? What is your step number 1 for hiring great employees?
Yeah, so we're going to talk about 6 steps today. And step number 1 is be really clear about who you're hiring for. So a lot of times, as a matter of fact, I just this morning had this conversation with somebody about a posting that they had for a job. And the posting was based on a whole list of all of these tasks. First of all, it was very, very long. But it really focused on all these tasks that somebody had to do. Yeah. And one of the things that I recommend that we as leaders is critical to understand is that, and this was the mistake I made way back when I was a controller of this international training company, had this big staff, and then when I started hiring people for my business, was that I initially thought about it as that people have to do tasks. And that's really not why we hire people. We hire people to produce results. Right. And one of the best ways to make sure that as you're hiring, that you're looking at what are the results. So the results are, what's the bigger picture end game that all of those tasks actually generate a process and create steps to getting to a result. Well, we're interested in people producing results, right? So The first step is have a position agreement, or what oftentimes is called job descriptions, but a position agreement that speaks to the results you want somebody to produce as opposed to the tasks. So when you're really clear about that, it does 2 things. One is it will allow you to have a better job posting, but secondly, it also includes things like what are the major responsibilities of that job and skills and qualifications. Like this morning when I was having this conversation with this contractor, a general contractor, Joe says, well, here's my listing. And I said, well, you use chief architect, and you use co-construct, and you use, this, project, scheduling and co-construct. Like there's some very specific experiences that you're looking for in that person. I don't see that listed there at all, right? So being really clear about what's the criteria for you for what you're looking for in that person in terms of skills and experience, like how many years should they have done that job? And then secondly is when you define what are the results. So if In other words, there is, what's the, let me give an example. So if it's a project manager, and if I'm hiring for a project manager, that I want to be able to know that they have done scheduling and they have done job cost management, and they've done cost to complete, and that they have client relationship experience. The more I have clarity about what all those things are that I would expect from that person in that position, then when I move into the interview piece of that process of hiring somebody, I'm going to be able to ask better questions. So the first piece of writing a job description is the place where you're going to get really clear about what is my criteria for having the right person in that job. You want to define it first for yourself before you ever begin looking for someone.
Yeah, that makes good sense. And, I equate that a little bit. I was just thinking here, if I was going to hire a carpenter, I'm not going to hire someone because they know how to cut a stud and put 2 nails in each end or 3 nails and stand a wall up and put it in the right place and put sheathing on it and put sheetrock on it, if that's what they do. I'm just going to, you're not going to get down to that level of detail. That's managing how they do it versus you're going to hire an experienced person that knows how to do that already and say, I just need a wall here, get it done. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Well, yeah, the thing about, to some degree, yes. And to a greater degree, what I'm talking about is the ability to define the criteria that's measurable.
Yeah.
Right. So I'll get to this a little bit more when we talk about one of the future steps about when you're actually in the interview itself.
Okay.
What are some of the steps that when you get to the interview that you want to be really clear about what are those specific results that you want somebody to be able to produce as they work for you. So defining it. So this first step is really just getting clear about shifting from what you just said, Dan, like the tasks, to what are the results. So I'll go back to my project manager, the ability to manage a schedule. Well, if I said to you, have you ever done do you do scheduling on your projects? And you'd go, yeah, I do scheduling on my projects. But when I'm interviewing you, there's a different kind of question I'm going to ask you to let me know if you do scheduling the way I do scheduling. Because we've all had the experience of hiring somebody with a title, and I see this all the time, right? Like we probably all have. Like we hire somebody with a particular title, but that title in a different company of foreman, project manager, designer, estimator, it's really different from company to company. And sometimes people get position titles that have nothing to do with their tactical skills and results that they produce in that job, which I think is a shame, but it happens in every area of a business. So it's part of why we end up not hiring well.
I'm dealing with some people right now that, it's not a bad thing, but, they hire someone to help do plans. Well, the next thing you know, the contractor's got this person, going out to the job and meeting with the client and getting material and making sure the subs are showing up and all this other things that have nothing to do with generating plans for a project. So now that person gets frustrated and they're not quite sure how to proceed. And it's just like,
that's a great example, Dan.
Yeah.
That's a great example.
So I see that happens all the time. It's like you got a warm body there that maybe you can put some info, you can have them do some of those tasks. And it's like, maybe not the best idea sometimes.
Yeah.
Maybe they can grow into it, but with an agreement, hey, would you mind, what do you think about doing this kind of stuff? So, all right, well, go ahead, Vicki. What's the next one that you?
So the second step is when you're recruiting, you want to let everybody know that you're looking. When you think about some of the best jobs that you've ever gotten, we could all agree that some of the best projects, some of the best people we've ever worked with have come from referrals, right? Referrals are golden, like that. We trust that. Yeah. And the same thing is true for hiring employees. And so, I mean, I know that there's a lot of sites out there. You can go to Indeed, you can go to Craigslist, Monster. And there's a whole list of other places, depending on the level of employment. It could be on LinkedIn or what have you, right? It's a great thing about technology. In addition to doing those things, though, I would recommend that people look at what's the best place for me to do outreach. Well, first of all, I would say ask your employees. Your employees are a great place to find other people. You never know who knows somebody, and your employees are very invested in working with other people that they know, like, and trust. So that's a really good place. Also, tell your neighbors, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your subs, tell your generals, tell your clients, tell your CPA, your advisors. Tell everybody that you're looking. And when you do, what you want to have is that, like, at least a one-page summary that is based on that position agreement that we just talked about, that says, here's the skills and qualifications I'm looking for. First of all, here's the overall responsibility of that job. Secondly, here's the 5 to 7 things that are the key deliverables, key, responsibilities. And then here are the skills and qualifications. So have it have those 3 elements. And I don't recommend that. And I know that some sites require you to put salary. They want you to put salary on there, but you might just not put anything on there initially when you are posting it. Just something that says compensation is commensurate with experience.
Right.
Because you're going to get lots of different people with different experience. But the more you can, like, share that with people and let them see, have something. And then when you send, let's say, an email out with that attachment, you can go, hey, do you know anybody who's good at these things? And give them a bullet list of, like, maybe 3 to 5 things. Don't make it more than that.
Right.
Of those key things that you know. If so, we have a position that's open. Would you mind just passing this along? When you also pass that along, you might have something on the bottom of the email that says, hey, if you forward this, they can find out a little bit more about us. And maybe you have a blurb on there about, here's who we are. Here's, you can go find out more about us here, or you can go look at the posting here, or call me here, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be the second piece, Dan, is tell everybody that you know. When I have queried clients and other business owners and leaders about where they found some of their best people, consistently that's the answer I get, is some of the best people I've ever gotten have come from referral. So tell as many people as you know. And and a lot of times, like, even as I'm saying this to you, I'm thinking to myself, there's probably people thinking, oh gosh, like, yeah, but everybody's looking. Why would they recommend me? Yeah. Well, but not everybody's asking. And unless you ask, right, then you don't know. So you put the word out there, and you just put it out there that goes, hey, if you know any great people who are really good at time management, scheduling, really great with people, good negotiator, whatever.
Or maybe someone knows someone that is not happy in their current position with the current company.
Yeah. Oh, I've seen that happen a lot. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was like somebody, it's oftentimes it is somebody who knows somebody, a lot of times. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I could see this working in reverse too, is, if you're a designer looking for more work, or contact the people you've done work for and say, hey, any other good contractors that could use, what I do? Just reverse it. And, it's a great way to market yourself.
I think that that's important because, and especially right now, I would say for anybody who's watching and listening to this, who is a subcontractor, who is looking to offer their services in the construction space, there are tons of opportunities out there for people who would love to hire a designer or an estimator who could do that work, not be on payroll, but who has that expertise, and that maybe they're growing and they have extra capacity, which I'm hearing a lot from everybody I work with, that this is a perfect time to put yourself out there. Mm-hmm. And if you're not, it's like, if you're not putting yourself out there, how are they going to know about you? And it's really not, I think a lot of times, Dan, people hesitate to put themselves out there because they feel salesy. And, it's like, I think car sales people gave the sales, sector like a bad name. But
Yeah.
it's interesting. I'm kind of laughing because I'm in the process of negotiating on the purchase of a car, and I just had that experience. But the thing is that it's about bringing value to that relationship and that conversation. Like, how do we approach it from a value-based conversation? What you do is valuable. What you have to offer is extremely valuable, and there's a huge need for you out there.
Yeah.
So instead of looking at it like, I got to go out there and hawk my wares, look at it instead like, I have some skill that can really help people, and put it out there
Yeah.
as an offer to be, of providing a solution to a problem. And a lot of times something to keep in mind, if for anybody who's thinking about doing that, and even as you're sending out this email asking for referrals for employees, look at it from the perspective of what's the problem that you solve, right? Because a lot of times we will outreach and will answer yes to an offer when your offer actually speaks to a problem I have. So it could be, do you find that it's really hard, if you're a designer or estimator listening here, it's like, it could be, and you want to, more clients, it could be, are you finding it hard to find qualified designers to help you with planning? Are you getting overwhelmed with too much work and you're not really ready to hire somebody, but you could use some, additional help for a while? Are you looking for someone who's really detail oriented, who can really up your game in terms of your designs or your estimates, right? I mean, those are some of the challenges that people face who are going to want what designers and estimators, or chief architects, consultants are going to have to offer.
Oh, yeah.
There's just a huge amount of need out there for you right now. So I'd say, go forth and let people know that you're there.
Yeah. Another good thing about asking people that you've done work for, that like what you do, they're not going to recommend you to someone that's going to take advantage of you or is going to slack you. They're going to recommend you to people that they know will take care of you too. So that's always important. It's like when I recommend people I know to help other people with designs, the people I recommend I know will take good care of whoever I send them to. So I can feel comfortable with that. And that's a big part of it. But again, it works in reverse. Jeff says he needs to remind myself to market when I don't need to. The current workload will not last.
Yes, Jeffrey, absolutely.
Good. Yeah.
It's that whole thing. If you want to get off the revenue roller coaster, market when you're busy, and then you won't have the you won't have the downturn.
Yeah. So even when we're talking about employees, this is marketing for people. I mean, it is marketing. You're marketing to attract good people, and then as a provider, you're marketing to be attractive to good people. So what can you do to do that? So I mean, if you're in here listening to this today, congratulations, because hopefully that'll get you thinking. And it works so well everywhere. Definitely in need of a full-time assistant. There you go, Paul. Yeah, that's what you get for being a good quality contractor guy. You get busy. That's a good problem to have, though. So, but pay attention, because these tips about to come up here will help you do the screening and interviewing. So, Vicki, why don't you proceed?
Yeah. So that's step number 3 is, so you've written a position agreement. You're really clear about who you want and what you're hiring for and the skills and qualifications, the results you want somebody to have produced. Second piece is you're telling everybody that you're doing outreach. Third piece, you start getting resumes in or applications. And before you waste time interviewing somebody, you want to have a good screening process in place. So a screening process looks like, I'm not going to set up an hour and a half interview with this person. I'm going to set up a 10-minute conversation. And in that 10-minute conversation, you want to have a few key questions that you ask that help you sort of filter through, are they really a right fit or not? I shared a minute ago that I had this conversation with Joe this morning, who was talking about he's hiring a project manager. Well, I said, how many people have you interviewed? He goes, 6, and none of them are a right fit for the job. I'm like, how many hours did that take you? Because the guy is super busy. He goes, it was an entire day and a half. And I said, Yeah, so let's put this piece in place. You need to be doing screening. So screening is going to allow you to ask some key questions like, just tell me what your average day or week looks like in your job. First of all, it's going to let in your previous job. And I'm going to back up for just a second, Dan. So one of the things that really help in the interview process or even in the asking process is to let people know what's going to happen so that it brings a level of expectation and clarity to how the process is going to look. Let me give you an example. You get somebody on the phone you're doing a phone interview with. And when you're first scheduling that phone interview, maybe even an email, you go, here's my process. I just want to have a quick 10-minute conversation with you to see if it's really a right fit so that I don't waste your time in an hour and a half long interview that we're going to do on Zoom or in person or whatever. So can we schedule that 10-minute conversation? And then when that conversation begins, you go, just going to kind of ask you some questions to get a feel for like your experience and what have you to see if it makes sense for us to move forward. Is that okay with you? So like now you've managed and set up that expectation that it's really clear about this isn't a full-blown interview. It'll also help you feel more comfortable when you start to ask this next set of questions. So you want to find out, like I said, one of the first ones is, hey, just tell me a little bit about your job. Like, what does your average week or month look like? What you're listening for is, does their average week or month actually look like your average week or month in that position in your company, or is it something else? Tell me about, and then I would say, tell me about why you left, each of your last positions. Listen carefully. And first of all, if somebody changes jobs every year and a half, guaranteed that's going to be the same for you. So if that's okay with you, that's great. But if it's not okay with you, don't assume that they're going to miraculously transform themselves because they work for your company. In which case, if that's not okay, don't interview them. Don't even waste your time having that phone call. So, but when you're on the phone with them and you say, tell me about why you left, why did you leave this job? Why did you leave that job? What you're listening for is, are they a victim, right? Are they a whiner? Are they like everybody else is at fault for my life not working out? I got fired from this job. I got fired from that job. Well, they downsized. Well, listen to when they say they downsized. If they were the best employee, they probably wouldn't have been let go, right? So you just kind of want to ask some clarifying questions about that kind of thing. Why did they leave? And also some things about, if there's certain experience that they have to have, tell me how long you've done this. Tell me how long, if you worked on co-construct, how long have you worked on chief experts? What did that, tell me about your most what was a complex issue, the most complex part of that. You might actually defer that kind of a question to the actual in-person interview if you get that far. But the first screening, it's just a quick 10 minutes, like, what do I want to know that will help me identify if it makes sense for me to move forward and actually invest that hour and a half in an actual interview.
Yeah, that's good advice. It's kind of like, when you're talking to a potential client and you ask, they say, well, yeah, I'm going to get 10 bids. And you go, well, okay, maybe we're not a good fit. Or, yeah, I had a contractor that was working on my job the last time and they really screwed up and I sued them. You're looking for those kinds of answers. So if you structure the questions correctly, you can find out that stuff. People will just answer and not realize what they're saying, and they'll tell you the truth a lot of times and not even realize they're doing it. And it's like, they'll go back and think later, oh, I probably shouldn't have said that. But that's how you get clarity on who you're looking for. Great advice. I mean, I really like that. Just be mindful. So before we go on to the next one, I just want everybody to know that you can get this information. Vicki does have it handy. You can download this guide that she's looking at suiterbusinessbuilders.com/6-steps- to hiring great. I'll leave this on the screen for a while, and I'll actually put the link in the chat so you can go click on it. But you can get the handout for this. So Vicki, why don't you move forward? We still got 20 minutes left here.
Yeah. So step number 4 is prepare for your interview. So just like when you show up on a job site at the beginning of the day, you wouldn't actually, like it's the first day of the job, you would never show up with just having told people to be there without having materials, equipment, a schedule, a plan. Like you wouldn't just show up and then figure it out when you're already there. But I see people do this all the time in interviewing where they don't have a prepared set of questions. So my recommendation is that you have a list of a prepared set of questions that you're going to ask that are specific to the job that you're hiring for. So if you're hiring for a designer, then and you specifically said it's somebody who needs to know chief architect, let's say. And let's say there's also an element to that job that requires scheduling and project management. Then I'm going to have a list of questions that say, tell me about how you approach building a design using chief architect. And then just be quiet. Listen. Your job as the interviewer is to ask questions that are not yes, no. So I'm not going to ask a question like, so have you used chief architect for a while? Yes. Do you like using it? Yes. Are you good at it? Yes. I told you nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Instead, hey, so tell me about, when did you first learn how to use chief architect and how did you learn to get to be an expert at it? And tell me about how you approach a set of plans when you're using chief architect, and then just be quiet and listen. You really want to get a sense of how they think and how they process and how they work. And the more you can ask those open-ended questions, the more you'll be able to do that. Or let's say if it was somebody who was a project manager, you might ask a question like, tell me how you approach scheduling and how do you keep schedules up to date? Then just be quiet and just listen. And then ask additional clarifying questions along the way.
And
now,
I think what you're saying is really key. Is so many of us, it takes conscious doing this, or so many of us are just used to talking. Asking questions is hard, and shutting up is even harder. So that's really key information, everyone. Just ask a question and be quiet.
yes.
And listen.
Yeah.
Listen. I mean, really listen.
Well, and even I was saying before, Dan, about when you get on the phone with somebody or when you send that email saying, here's how our process is going to go. I always start interviews, and I do a lot of interviewing for clients. I always start an interview that says, here's what my goal is. My goal is that you and I both lead this conversation completely clear whether or not this is a right fit for you. So I'm going to ask you some very pointed questions. I'm going to ask you some really open-ended questions. I really want to understand how you think and how you process and how you do what you do, because for me, I think the worst thing that I could do to somebody is put them in a job that they're not really a good fit for. And for you, I would never want you to make a decision about working for someone that you don't feel good about. So I would hope that you'll also plan to ask me questions about what you want to know. But we're going to have open-ended dialogue, and I'm going to ask you some very pointed questions, and then I'm just going to be quiet. What you're saying, go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say, back to that question thing, if you're interviewing someone and they're asking you good pointed questions, that's a good sign. That's a really good sign.
Yes.
That they're curious, they're interested, they want to know more. That's, you're looking for people like that. Absolutely.
Yes. I'm going to touch on something that you just said because I think it's important, which is a lot of times we think that we have to talk more, especially in these days when it's tough to find employees, and we think we have to sell ourselves.
Yeah.
The truth is that, yes, there's certainly some of that to the whole conversation, and yes, you want to include some of that. But that prospective employee should be talking 80% of the time and you 20% of the time.
Yeah.
Or if you get towards the end of the conversation, and you might even start out at the beginning of the conversation, give them a context, give them an overview of tell them about your company, tell them about, how you work, about your team and structure and so on and so forth. So they have a context as they're answering your very open-ended questions of how that might fit within your structure or your company. What they're going to be interested in is that you're interested in them. right? What they're going to be interested in and what's going to make you attractive is that you cared enough to spend the time to ask the questions, that it's also a reflection of a well-run company that has that kind of rigor and discipline, and that's attractive to people who are rigorous and disciplined, which is, ideally what we want.
Yeah.
So,
cool. Yeah. All right. Next one. Number 5.
So let's say that you have decided they're the right person and you want to make them an offer. Before you actually hire somebody, I strongly recommend that you check references. People can put anything on a piece of paper and they can tell you anything. But if somebody's amount of years of experience is important to you, or their education is important, or their if they're in a finance position, you should do a criminal background check is one of the reference checks that you should do. If education is important, doing an education check. Checking references and talking to other people will illuminate for you things that you would be very surprised you'll find out. I'll give you an example. We were hiring, and this is a little bit different than, like, there's checking references that is checking for somebody's previous employment. That previous employer can tell you hire and fire date, that's it. Or start and end date, I should say. That's all they can really tell you legally. But if they give you a reference of somebody who they've worked with before as a previous manager or previous coworker even, I would stick with somebody who is a manager. If it was a finance position, I might talk to a CPA. I had a situation where we were hiring a controller, and she had given a reference to the owner of this previous business she'd worked for. And I had some hesitations about this person. She had a lot of skills and qualifications, but there was something that just didn't quite fit right. There was some lack of experiences in certain places. And she showed up to the first interview late. And she had a story about it. And I just said to the owner, I don't know if it all fits together quite right. I think that you should make sure, have these conversations, check these references. She called a previous employer. He called a previous employer. And the guy said, well, she's really bright and she's smart, but she runs kind of at her own pace. In other words, if she wants to go do yoga in the morning, she's going to go do yoga and she's going to show up late. And then she'll have a story about why not. Or it can be really quirky about following through on certain things. She really, like, when she's engaged, she's like all on hands on deck. She's super smart. But she's very, like, sometimes she just gets very iffy about her reliability and your ability to count on her. And the owner hired her anyway. And sure enough, that was the behavior that showed up in her job. And he ended up having to let her go 6 months later. So references will tell you, interesting things, and not necessarily things that sound horrible at the time, but they will give you some insight into that person's character.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you another one about background check. We hired a controller for a client, and this woman insisted that her education check that didn't check out was because of some flaw on the educational institution's part, and that the credit check, she asked that it not be done because she was in the middle of a divorce with her husband. Well, it turned out that she was a professional criminal. Oof. And she started embezzling from the company within 2 weeks after she was hired. Oof.
Ouch.
Thankfully, it only went on about 9 months.
Only.
Minimal. But then it came out that it had happened at other companies.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Oops.
Yeah. I've had the experience of not doing background checks kind of burning you, but it can be, it can just be your safety net, and you're kind of like your final last check.
Yeah. Of course, you can check social media, Google the people. I mean, there's lots of other ways to find information about them.
Facebook these days, yeah, right.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can find out a lot about someone by just seeing what they're doing online. That's why you want to be careful with what you do online. I mean, it's just like, come on, guys. It's anyway. So,
well, it's a good segue to number 6, which number 6
is. Before you get there, I'm gonna hold 6 for a second, and then I want people to know that you have this kind of. Did you put that product together where you had the forms and everything that people could get? We talked about that.
The contractors hiring blueprint.
Yeah. Is
Yeah,
that available?
it is. It's available on my website.
Okay. We
It's
never even talked about this, but I want people to be aware of this because I've seen those forms and they're excellent how you have them laid out. So if people go to your website, suiterbusinessbuilders.com, what would they look for?
If you click on, there's a link at top that says courses, and the first one is Contractors Hiring Blueprint. And that course actually walks you through a series of videos that go into more depth in this. Included in it is a list of screening interview questions, in-person interview questions, an interview evaluation sheet, and there's also a whole process for being able to onboard great teams.
Okay, so that's under courses,
Yep.
Contractor Hiring Blueprint. So if anybody is looking for some of the help that, how would these guys know what questions to ask? You have that all worked out already, right?
Yep. The interview questions are all in.
Yeah. So I've seen this package and it's $497. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Worth every penny of it if you're hiring someone. It'll save you from those mistakes that Vicki was just talking about.
Well, considering that it cost about 25 to 30% of somebody's annual salary when we make the wrong hire, not to mention the enormous loss of time and energy. Yeah.
So cool. Anyway, so this is awesome. Check that out. Good stuff. And
thanks for remembering that, Dan. You and I didn't.
Yeah. And again, as I'm thinking, listening to you, it's like, God, how can people get help with this stuff? So that's what you do. Go here and you'll be glad you did. All right. So Vicki, go ahead.
All right. So number 6 is check your gut. I oftentimes will find that when I pay attention to my gut check about somebody, it's usually right. And it's interesting, going back to the interview process, when you're interviewing somebody, a lot of times we'll really like someone. And I've had this experience where I try to actually lead them in questions because I really like them. But then in retrospect afterwards, I'll think about it and I'll go, there's something that's just not quite right. And I kind of know it is, but I want to convince myself otherwise. And for anybody who's listening to this, if you ever made a wrong hire, like you probably know this. I know it's certainly been true for me, right? Like you, Dan, like we've all been there. And so just check do a gut check. Do I really think that this person's a right fit, or did I kind of convince myself that they were, or I think that's the only option I have, or, something else. So
it's hard. It's hard to do that gut check, especially, you short. I remember back in the day, I didn't have any work lined up and I really had this bid I put out for this client. It would have been a nice job, but I just felt bad about even working. Fortunately, I just didn't feel right. So it must have came through my presentation because I didn't get the job. But I've had some of those experiences where I recognize that. Mm-hmm. It's hard to do though, isn't it? Because we're so busy and we just want to get things rolling, get it done. It's like, come on, bring it on. It's just like, stop.
Yeah.
Ask your gut. How are you feeling, gut?
Well, it's kind of like, Dan, it's a little like pre-planning a project.
Yeah.
So we all know that the more you plan and you prepare and you spend the time at the front end of a project, you know how it takes less time at the back end. You don't have as many breakdowns or problems. It doesn't take you as long. The same thing is true for hiring, right?
Yeah.
The more you can have a well planned out strategy for how you're hiring, who you're hiring, have a good process and a checks and balance system for how you're doing that, just like a project at the front end during the estimating or handoff process or, planning piece, the more smoothly it goes at the back end, including for employees like onboarding, right? Like once they're hired, do you just hire them and then like check in with them once in a while? Or do you actually have like a plan for here's how, we're going to orient that person so that they get implemented or, really brought into our system in a way that will have them be most successful at their job.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. So good stuff. Good stuff. Anybody here listening yet have any gut check stories you could mention? I haven't. Yeah. It's just, you just know.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, the gut knows. And but how you communicate with it, that's tough. So, well, cool, Vicki. You've got a few more minutes left. Anything else you want to add to this?
One thing I'll say in the download that of the 6 steps that I just shared here today, at the very top, there's a link to 6 steps to writing a great position agreement. So that's also another, and they're both free. So people can get that too. And yeah. So,
Okay, cool. Yeah. So when you get there, you just type in your name and email, and you'll get access to those things, and you'll be good to go with that content.
in the Contractors Hiring Blueprint course, there's actually an example of a position agreement pre-written in there for an estimator and an office manager. So that might help some people out too.
I've seen those, and it's just like, God, why didn't I think of this? Probably because that's not what I do. That's what you do. And it's very, very well done. And it's just like, yeah, hire. How'd you say it again? You don't hire for the task. You hire for the position.
Hire for results.
Yeah, the results.
Yeah,
And,
when we hire somebody, we're not looking for helpers, right? That was my challenge long ago, is that I just kept hiring people who were helping me do tasks. I wasn't really thinking from the perspective of what are the results I want someone to produce. And, results are specific, they're measurable, they're time driven. That's when we talk about results. When I talk about results, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That they're quantifiable by you or anyone else.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like hiring an electrician. You're not going to tell them how to put the outlet in.
Right.
You just know you need an outlet there, and he'll take care of.
Or
they'll take care of the rest.
That if that electrician works for you and they're a lead, that lead is responsible for making sure that they're clear about scope before they go onto the job site. That the team is lined out every day by 8 a.m. to make sure that they know exactly what has to be installed that day. That time cards are delivered by the end of the day on Friday by 5 p.m. Like that's what's the result? That's the result. It's specific and it's measurable and it's time driven.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I remember back in the day with our electrician, we had an electrician once that always left a mess at the end of, he wouldn't clean up. So we had to make that part of their, what they do, what we expect of them. We had to fine them a couple times because they still didn't do it. But once they got the idea. So we did have to get nasty with them for a couple of times, but then they got the idea. You had
to into a contract that was a mutual agreement that said, if your job site, if you don't clean up by the end of the day, we're going to fine you X amount of money.
Yeah, and we didn't have that kind of an agreement with them up in advance. We just said, "Here, go do this job." We just thought everybody would clean up, right? Well, no, it doesn't work that way. You do have to spell it out. Hey, Vicki, this has been fun. Thanks for being here. Great information. Again, you guys, SuiterBusinessBuilders.com. You can get access to the products she has, and the let me put that other banner back up here to get the 6 steps that we just discussed as a handout. You can get that, and there's a link in there to get to the other guide that Vicki, you were talking about. So, all right, we got 2 minutes. You got the last word.
Final word. Really in your hiring process, I would just reiterate, I think what I just said, Dan, which is you wouldn't go build a project without a plan and without an idea of what the result is that you want. Don't approach your hiring from that way. Have a plan, know what you want to do, know what you're hiring for. And then, and even and just resist the temptation to think it's really hard to find good people and I have to take what I can.
Awesome. As Christy says, hey, Vicki, great stuff. Thank you so much.
Hi, Christy. Thanks.
I'll end with that comment there. Thanks again, Vicki.
All right. Thank you, Dan.
All right.
Bye.